Hello, everybody, and welcome to Crystal Case Studies. This is the place where we deep dive into crystal geology and mineral science. My name is Emily. I'm a geologist, and today we are going to be looking at Patagonian Pink Amethyst and whether it really can be classified as amethyst. Before we get started on today's crystal, if you enjoy crystal geology, crystal science, or minerals, or if you're a crystal seller, you use crystals in your craft, or you're just a crystal enthusiast, this might be the podcast for you. So you can follow me on social media under @Crystal Case Studies to stay up to date with all of my crystal geology content, and let me know if you want me to cover your favourite crystal or stone. So today's case study is on Patagonian Pink Amethyst. I am going to be drawing very heavily today from a paper that has been really helpful when researching this topic. It is called Pink Amethyst from the El Choique mine, Patagonia, Argentina. And I will link below where you can purchase this paper because it is really, really helpful and really informative. So like the name suggests, Patagonian Pink Amethyst comes from Patagonia. This is a region in the southern tip of South America, which includes part of Chile and part of Argentina. The El Choique mine is in Argentinian Patagonia, and the mine is just over 100 kilometers east of the Chile border. This stone, or these geodes, I should say, because Patagonian Pink Amethyst is only found in geodes. These geodes first appeared on the market in about 2017 at gem fairs in Brazil. And since then, it's spread throughout the Western market and is available from many wholesalers and retailers in the UK and elsewhere. So this geode producing area is in the Neuquén Basin. So that's the kind of the geological unit that it's found within. And this is in northern Patagonia, which is in about central west Argentina. We're in the foothills of the Andes. The Andes are the mountain chain which run down the west coast of South America. And the geodes are hosted in the red beds. So these are red clay stones, mudstones, and sandstones, which have all been deposited in a fluvial or lacustrine environment. So those are geological terms basically used to describe the type of environment these rocks were first laid down in. These are sedimentary rocks. If you've listened to any of my content before, you might have picked up what that is. Maybe you already know, but sedimentary basically means it has been deposited by a natural process on the Earth's surface, such as the course of a river, perhaps a sand dune, or at the base of a lake or at the base of the sea. So fluvial, I mentioned the word fluvial, means it is from a river or stream environment, and lacustrine basically means lake environment. So the host rock of these geodes is sedimentary, and it was deposited by water about 80 million years ago during the late Cretaceous, which geologically that is quite young. I know that 80 million years ago potentially doesn't seem like it could be young. But in geological terms, that is, I was talking about rose quartz on the last podcast episode, and the host rocks for the rose quartz in Madagascar are some of the youngest, I think, are 2.5 billion years old. So 80 million years is actually not that long geologically. These geodes are very easily extracted from the sedimentary beds around them. These are on private land, these geode beds, and it is currently quite an informal extraction process. So it literally is hammers and sacks, and it's not really been mechanized yet. So these red beds are coloured red due to the presence of hematite. This is kind of an early clue into what we're going to get into later. And this means that the beds were deposited under oxidizing conditions, which essentially means that they are really rich in ferric iron, which is basically rust. And there was a lot of oxygen whilst they were being deposited in the atmosphere. So the geode beds are overlain by marine deposits. So if you have the geode hosting bread beds, the geological unit on top of these, if you consider these like two slices of bread lying on top of each other, the slice of bread on top are marine deposits. So these are sandstones, bentonitic clay stones, and gypsum beds, which gypsum is a type of selenite. Selenite is, or as I say, selenite is a type of gypsum. Selenite is like a trade name for some forms of gypsum, because gypsum can form other like physical manifestations as well, such as desert roses and satin spar. And these beds that contain like sandstones and clays and selenite, these were deposited by seawater. So the exact formation mechanism of geodes within a sedimentary environment is actually unknown. This isn't like your classic amethyst geodes, apophyte geodes that you can find in Brazil and Uruguay and India. So those are formed within igneous environments where lava flows cool and they have gas bubbles within them which solidify, and they form these little incubation centres for geodes to form in. So the most likely origin of sedimentary geodes is the dissolution of anhydrite nodules known as protogeodes, followed by the infilling of other minerals. So that is an excerpt from a fantastic paper that I have used to make this podcast. I'm going to link it down below where you can purchase the paper. And that has been incredibly informative on learning about pink amethyst. I really recommend buying this and reading it if you are interested in pink amethyst, or if you sell it so you can kind of talk a bit more about it and really understand. So I just mentioned the dissolution of anhydrite nodules. So within a marine sedimentary environment, you can get anhydrite nodules, which basically anhydrite is a mineral. It's kind of within a series of minerals that are deposited within marine environments when you have concentrations of soluble elements. So they kind of like precipitate out of the water in this like gloopy, gunky way. And you end up with these nodules forming within the sediment at the base of a marine environment. So kind of like these lumps of gunk, which is sounding really appealing, isn't it? So these little protogeodes, they've been described as dissolve later on in the lithification process. The stability of the minerals that those are made of gets lesser, so they may dissolve, and those kind of little circular cavities can be infilled by other minerals. This process is based on numerous studies of sedimentary geodes which are found throughout the US, and all of the theories surrounding sedimentary geodes, or geodes forming in a sedimentary environment, include the presence of anhydrite nodules in marine sediments. However, the Patagonian pink amethyst geodes are hosted in sedimentary beds, as we just said. So they have been deposited by water, but they've been deposited by fresh water. So there's no salt in the water, and there's not this kind of like build-up of minerals and marine minerals. So I mentioned like fluvial, lacustrine environments, the red beds, they've been deposited by rivers and at the bottom of lakes. However, the sedimentary bed, the red beds, is overlain by marine deposits with evaporitic layers in them. So layers of gypsum, halite, evaporites really that are formed in a shallow marine environment where there's a lot of evaporation and therefore a lot of precipitation of elements. And this forms anhydrite nodules. So these are where those minerals have kind of come from. This is where that's kind of the ingredients list that has been needed and has been all ticked off and has resulted in the formation of pink amethyst geodes. So if you've seen these pink amethyst geodes, firstly, they're gorgeous. And often they have other minerals inside them as well. So there are other minerals found within these geodes listed as calcite, celestine, barite, gypsum, and lithophorite, which I'm not sure how catchy of a name that is. I'm not sure if that's going to catch on within kind of the crystal market as much as pink amethyst has. So calcite is actually contained in many of the pink amethyst geodes which have been found, and this may be colourless to white, pale grey, dark to very dark to black, pale yellow, amber yellow, or red. I've seen a lot of pink amethyst geodes being sold on Instagram that have really beautiful, striking black crystals within them. And those are the calcite crystals in and amongst the pink amethyst crystals, and the X-ray fluorescence within a spectroscopic analysis of these calcite crystals shows that they can have up to 1,500 parts per million of manganese. So it seems to be that the darker the calcite crystals, the higher the concentration of manganese within them. The quartz geodes are obviously the most sought after in this deposit, and they can be pink to kind of reddish orange to white to some are like almost purple, much more like classic amethyst, which we're going to get onto in a moment. The geodes are lined with chalcedony, which is a cryptocrystalline variety of quartz. Cryptocrystalline essentially just means that it's formed in teeny tiny crystals that are only visible underneath a microscope, rather than the big quartz crystals that you can actually see, like the pink amethyst quartz crystals, where you can literally see the quartz point and you can see its different sides and everything. Cryptocrystalline chalcedony is quartz, same mineral structure, but it's formed on a tiny scale. And this kind of chalcedony coating on the inside of the geode has acted as a substrate for the nucleation of bigger, well-developed quartz crystals and drues. So that chalcedony wash, if you like, or that coating around the inside of the geode has acted as like a really perfect sticky layer for these really nicely done, like really nice, well-developed, big pink amethyst crystals to form. So we're going to get onto the colour now, which is kind of where there has been an element of controversy. I'm going to touch on the debate that a lot of mineralogists have. If you are a user of Mindat, the webpage for learning all about minerals, kind of like an encyclopedia of minerals. If you have ever used Mindat, you probably have come across some kind of debate or argument somewhere on there concerning the classification of crystals and minerals based on their colour. So the given kind of classic formal definition of amethyst is purple quartz. So the actual written definition is a clear purple or bluish violet variety of crystallized quartz. So that does crop up in multiple other stones. So rose quartz is another example where the definition of rose quartz is that it is pink. And there's many other crystals where this is the case, where the definition actually relies upon it being a certain colour. And that's where this kind of element of debate comes in. So amethyst is actually purple due to the presence of between 10 and 100 parts per million iron ions, which is a bit of a tongue twister. So iron, like rust iron, Fe iron, ions. So Fe3 plus, which is ferric iron, actually within the quartz crystal lattice. This inclusion or substitution of these ions within the quartz crystal lattice, it creates a color center. So basically, as like the crystal lattice is building, there's every now and then there's this like skip where the ion is, and light interacts just slightly differently with those parts of the crystal, which means that it absorbs light slightly differently, and we can see it as purple. So in terms of other pink quartzes, like other pink quartz crystals, they are generally coloured pink either. So there's two main reasons that pink quartzes are pink. This is either because of the presence of strands of mineral inclusions. This is in the case of rose quartz, where there are strands of mineral inclusions which are kind of chemically similar to dumortierite. Dumortierite is a blue mineral, but they believe that this pink, sort of very similar, like sister mineral to dumortierite, is the reason that rose quartz is pink. Or the other way that pink quartzes are pink, is because of the presence of individual aluminium and phosphorus ions within the quartz crystal lattice. This is the case with crystallized pink quartz. So again, I mentioned this on my last podcast episode with Gemma. If you haven't listened to that, that's really interesting. And the fact that crystallized pink quartz is actually chemically different to rose quartz. So there's a little bit of a misconception in the crystal world that crystallized rose quartz is exactly the same as rose quartz, but it's like super rare that it's crystallized, but they're actually chemically different. So they're colored in different ways. I do go more into that, as I say, in the last episode. Generally, the term rose quartz is actually misused in the case of crystallized rose quartz, and it's actually like a mineralogist would argue with you, or maybe not all mineralogists. If you're a mineralogist and you think that they're the same, you can call crystallized pink quartz rose quartz, please let me know. But some mineralogists, I have seen many mineralogists arguing online that they are not the same thing, and it is pink quartz and it's not rose quartz because it's different. So the preliminary optical and geochemical analyses of the Patagonian geodes suggests that iron is responsible for the pink coloration. So therefore, rose quartz, they can't be rose quartz or pink quartz because iron is not involved with either of the really important main ways that quartz can be pink. So either the mineral inclusions of a mineral similar to mortarite or the presence of aluminium and phosphorus ions. Neither of those have got anything to do with iron, right? So the presence of iron here, it means it's something else. It's not rose quartz and it's not pink quartz. So this paper conducted a spectroscopic study, which is basically a study of the absorption and the emission of light. So they basically use like a fancy piece of equipment to look at how light is split down into its component color parts when interacting with a material. And you get like absorption parts of the spectrum and like non-absorption parts. So you can see how the elements are causing the material to interact with light. So the spectroscopic study of Patagonian pink amethyst geodes indicates that the pink colour is actually due to the presence of two different types of iron. So firstly, these are substituted iron ions within the crystal lattice. These are invisible to the naked eye, and they cause colour centres. This is like amethyst. This is what I was saying earlier. That's why amethyst is purple. So this is evidenced in the spectroscopic study by an absorption band very similar to that of amethyst. So the second type of iron, or the second kind of function of iron within this environment to create this colour, is the presence of hematite inclusions up to 3 nanometers wide. So these are grains of hematite which are visible under a microscope. So they're much larger than the substituted ions within the crystal lattice. These are actually like little particles of iron that you can actually see under a microscope. And they are evidenced by the spectroscopic study as an absorption band similar to a mixture of quartz and hematite. So essentially, you've got these two kind of layers of iron in this quartz acting over the top of one another. The first layer, kind of the internal, if you like, layer, is causing them to be purple. And then these hematite inclusions are actually causing it to be like a pink colour over the top of that. That's why sometimes the geodes have like a purplish glow to them. It's because there are some parts which are like just standard amethyst. So therefore, the findings of this paper are that the Patagonian geodes are purplish pink amethystine quartz. So these can be referred to as pink amethyst. There is a strong indication that enriched surface brines carried soluble minerals from the overlying marine beds downwards through into the red sandstone layers until they reached perhaps an impermeable layer of mudstone beneath these sandstone layers, and the geodes would have formed. So the anhydrite nodules, which I mentioned earlier to do with the marine beds, this is where that precipitation would occur. So those kind of really rich surface brines, which a brine basically is a really salty water. If you ever have like olives in brine, that's what I always think of when I hear this geological word. So the surface brines, these are groundwaters that have been heavily enriched in soluble minerals. These will seep downwards through the geological beds, downwards because of gravity, down and down and down through the sandstones. And they will form these anhydrite nodules, and the anhydrite nodules will have changed as geological time has passed and lithification occurs to be infilled by quartz. So whilst this lithification was occurring and these quartz geodes were forming, iron was available in very large amounts from the red beds that I mentioned earlier. So these iron-rich red beds, so iron-rich, you can see that they're red. This iron would have been incorporated into the crystallization, and there we are, the formation of pink amethyst geodes. So in terms of the kind of the formal definition of what amethyst is, do you, as a crystal, if you hear you're a crystal enjoyer at the very least, do you adhere to the very strict definition of amethyst as it has to be purple? Or would you say that that definition should be updated to quartz that is purple because, or quartz that has iron as a substituting ion within the crystal lattice? Like, do you think it should be made more scientific and more accurate? Because it clearly, there's this debate. I've had this, I mean, me and Candice of Self and Others, we've spoken about this before, about the arguments that people like to have about different types of quartzes and whether or not they should just all be called quartz, because within the same quartz deposit you could have purple quartz and yellow quartz and kind of, I don't want to use the word, but like brown smoky, smoky quartz, and other types of quartz. And people like to slap names on them, obviously. Obviously, you want to call purple quartz amethyst, and you want to call yellow quartz citrine, and you want to call smoky quartz. But there's a bit of a debate for, and I think there's a bit of an argument for, really, that these are all just quartz, and the colouring shouldn't give it this new name. But then equally, in the crystal trade, you need to, things need like interesting, cool names. It's great to have trendy names. It's great to have, it sparks interest, it sparks industry and business. Many people build their livelihoods off it. It kind of, I think it makes people more interested in the material. If it was all called quartz, because like a strict mineralogist, you would say quartz variant rose quartz and quartz variant amethyst. So the quartz is kind of the first important word there. So very strict mineralogists would do that. But do you want to be doing that in your crystal business? Like, would you list your products as just quartz variant amethyst, quartz variant citrine? What do you think? If you have an opinion on this, or if you have an experience with this, please let me know. I would love to hear what you think. This is kind of a debate within mineral classification, and whether or not all pink quartzes can be called rose quartz just because it's pink, even if it's coloured in different ways. Can a pink stone be referred to as amethyst, even though it's not purple? And the definition of amethyst says it has to be purple, it's purple quartz. And can you, when it gets even more complicated, when you include smoky quartz, people have, there's a thing at the moment for black amethyst. Again, if you're going by the definition of amethyst being purple, how can it be amethyst if it's black? Smoky citrine versus smoky quartz versus citrine. If it's, where do you draw the line? And would you rather someone else drew it for you? Would you rather there was a mineralogist somewhere, on Mindat saying, that's what it is, you've got to call it that? Or is it down to interpretation? Is it down to how you use the stone and how the stone uses you? Where are you on that debate? I'll finish off with the holistic elements of Patagonian Pink Amethyst. So pink amethyst is considered to have both the elements of amethyst and the elements of pink crystals. So amethyst is generally used with to kind of promote the support and healing of the physical body. This comes from a really old ancient Greek belief that amethyst would protect you from drunkenness. So they used to drink water out of amethyst goblets, and it would make it look like it was wine. So like the host of the party would be drinking from an amethyst goblet, and that meant that they weren't going to get drunk because they were just drinking water. And you don't want to get drunk in your own house when maybe there's people there, maybe it's like a political thing, or you don't trust the people at your house party. You don't want things to get out of hand, so they wouldn't be drinking alcohol, but the people around them would think they would, and then they would think that I think that's where that amethyst protects you from drunkenness comes from. And that has kind of morphed into the fact that amethyst is believed to really support the physical body and the healing of the physical body. So pink crystals are related to the higher heart chakra. So the higher heart chakra, which is a bit of a tongue twister, is between the throat chakra and the heart chakra. So kind of low, upper chest. This chakra is related to the emotional connection that we hold with ourselves and with others. So pink amethyst actually combines both of these elements. So it combines the physical healing and the physical body, and the emotional element of the higher heart chakra. So I hope that you have enjoyed today's deep dive into Patagonian Pink Amethyst. If you did enjoy this episode, please follow and rate this podcast and find me on social media. My name is Emily. It has been a pleasure, and I hope to see you again.